You think the dollar is just money, a simple piece of paper representing value. But what if I told you, it's not just money? It's a weapon. A weapon that conquered the world, not through armies or bombs, but through debt, trust, and illusion. Every nation on earth is tied to it. Every global crisis somehow circles back to it. And yet, almost no one truly understands how it became this powerful. Tonight we'll trace the silent war fought not on battlefields but in banks, oil fields, and boardrooms. A story of manipulation hidden behind economic language, where the real empire isn't built on land, it's built on credit. Let's rewind to the early 20th century. Once money meant gold, a tangible asset. You held a coin, you held value. But in 1913, something monumental happened in the United States, something that would quietly rewrite global power. The Federal Reserve System was born. It was sold to the public as a way to stabilize the economy. But what it really did was privatize control over money creation. For the first time in history, the power to print money wasn't entirely in the hands of the government. It was in the hands of private bankers. Fast forward a few years, 1914. World War I erupts. Nations need money, lots of it. So they borrow. The U.S. prints, lends, and profits. By the time the war ends, one truth becomes clear. Whoever controls credit, controls the war, and America had just realized that power. As Europe lay in ruins after World War II, the United States emerged untouched, wealthy, and armed with 2/3 of the world's gold reserves. In 1944, world leaders met at the Bretton Woods Conference, and there, behind closed doors, the modern financial world was rebuilt. The agreement was simple. On the surface, all currencies would be tied to the U.S. dollar, and the dollar would be tied to gold. But this gave the United States a unique privilege, the ability to print the one currency that everyone else needed. It was subtle, brilliant, and devastatingly effective. Because now, if France, Japan, or Brazil wanted to trade internationally, they needed dollars. And who could create dollars out of thin air? Only one nation. The global economy became dollar-dependent, and the U.S. became the banker of the planet. But power has a cost. By the 1960s, America was spending beyond its means. Vietnam War, social programs, foreign aid. Gold reserves were draining. Other nations started asking, if the dollar is backed by gold, where is the gold? In 1971, French President Charles de Gaulle even demanded that the U.S. return gold in exchange for its dollars. And that's when the illusion broke. On August 15, 1971, President Richard Nixon appeared on television and made a quiet announcement. The dollar would no longer be backed by gold. That single moment ended the Bretton Woods system and ended real money as humanity knew it. Now the dollar was backed by nothing but trust. But here's the twist, and instead of collapsing, it grew stronger. Why? Because something even more powerful was about to replace gold as the anchor of the dollar: oil. After 1971, the U.S. faced a crisis. Without gold, how could it keep global demand for dollars alive? In 1973, a secret deal was struck with Saudi Arabia, the biggest oil producer at the time. The terms were simple. Oil would only be sold in U.S. dollars. In return, America would protect Saudi Arabia militarily and politically. It was genius. Now every nation that needed oil, and every nation did, first had to buy dollars. From Japan to Germany to India, all had to hold U.S. currency. And so the petrodollar system was born, an invisible chain that bound the global economy to the American dollar. This meant the U.S. could print money endlessly, buy real goods, and other nations would absorb the inflation. It was the modern empire, hidden in plain sight. Over the decades, this financial weapon became sharper. The U.S. didn't need to invade to control. It just needed to cut off access to dollars. Countries that resisted the system, like Iraq, Libya, Iran, all faced consequences. When Saddam Hussein tried to sell oil in euros, Iraq was invaded. When Gaddafi proposed a gold-backed African currency, Libya was destroyed. Coincidence? Maybe. But history whispers otherwise. The message was clear: trade in dollars, or face isolation, sanctions, or worse. The dollar became the lever of compliance. Through institutions like the IMF and World Bank, developing nations were buried under loans they could never repay. In return, they surrendered economic sovereignty. This is how the world's most powerful empire spread, without a single colony. Today, the weapon has evolved. Now it's not about oil or gold. It's about data and digital control. The rise of SWIFT, sanctions, and digital finance has made the US dollar a tracking system as much as a currency. In 2022, when Russia was cut off from SWIFT, it wasn't through war, it was through financial erasure. At the same time, America's own debt has exploded, crossing $34 trillion. Every new dollar printed weakens trust, yet somehow strengthens control. Because when the system is global, everyone is trapped inside it. The more debt there is, the more the world must depend on the dollar to survive. It's a paradox. The same paper that creates wealth also chains nations in dependency. And now, with the rise of central bank digital currencies, CBDCs, the system may enter its final phase, a world where every transaction is traceable, programmable, and controllable. The dollar won't just dominate market, it will dominate behavior. History tells us something chilling. Every empire that gained control through currency, Rome, Spain, Britain, eventually collapsed under its own weight. The dollar system is no different. Hyperinflation, unsustainable debt, and global resentment are already visible cracks. Nations are slowly moving toward alternatives: BRICS, gold trade, digital yuan, crypto reserves. Yet the paradox remains. Even as they move away, they still depend on what they resist. That's the genius of financial warfare. It traps even those who fight back. The dollar is not just currency. It's a system of control built on global dependence. Real wealth isn't in printed paper, but in resources, production, and trust. And as that trust erodes, so does the foundation of the dollar empire. Every crisis, inflation, sanctions, recession, is not a bug in the system. It's a feature of how the system maintains power. The question isn't how long can it last. The real question is, what replaces it when it falls? And when that day comes, will the new system free us or bind us even tighter?